Once again, I'm back to take you again through yet another session. I am Clovis Kawaseke, an agroecologist of Mountains of the Moon University, and I'm very happy to see you once again as my esteemed learners and colleagues. I'm getting to understand that you are now following very well what we have been going through, considering the sessions that we have already accomplished. And I would imagine that you still remember that we talked about agroecology as a set of farming practices. We also talked about agroecology as a science, and we also said that agroecology can be a social political movement. Those are very important sectors or manifestations of agroecology. But today I'm going to begin with talking about agroecology as a set of farming practices. What do I mean by a set of farming practices? Practices in farming, of course, can be so many, they can be diverse. But if you can remember in our earlier sessions, I had talked about soil health being the bedrock of agroecology. So the practices that are involved in soil fertility management are extremely important in agroecology. So as a set of farming practices, the practices that ascertain soil fertility are extremely important. But at the same time, if you can remember about when I was talking about how agroecology does not encourage the use of toxic chemicals like the synthetic agri-inputs, like synthetic pesticides or synthetic fertilizers, we have certain interventions that we use for pest and disease control. Actually, we don't usually call it disease control, we call it disease management, pest and disease management. And here we most of the time try to promote things which we call biorationals. Biorationals are actually preparations made out of plant material or animal material, but they can actually be used in pest and disease management. We shall be expanding on all these in future to see how each of these ones work. So instead of using the toxic and toxic chemicals which are persistent in the environment, we can use biorationals in agroecology. When it comes to mechanization, we know that the whole world is obsessed with mechanization, and truly it is important that if we have to do agriculture properly, we need to mechanize. But in agroecology, when we want to mechanize, we actually advise that we use light machinery to minimize pollution. We don't have to use very heavy machinery, because heavy machinery comes along with many other demerits which actually bring in a lot of environmental degradation and pollution. We shall also talk about what type of light machinery we can use and which are accepted in agroecology as we move on. Some of the important practices that are really very, very pertinent with agroecology include diversification of varieties, species, and enterprises. For us, we believe in diversity. Because we actually act basing on systems, we even think in systems, we act in systems, and to do that one, we know that the more diverse elements you have in a system, the more complex a system is, the more sustainable and the more resilient. So diversification of varieties when we are actually growing crops, diversification of species when it comes by diversity, and diversification of enterprises is something very, very, very important in agroecology. I think most of you have been hearing over the mass media the 3 R's where they are talking of reduce, reuse, and recycle, more especially when they are talking about waste management. The 3 R's in agroecology are extremely important. When we talk of reducing, we are talking about reducing in degrading activities, reducing in waste, and reducing in anything that can actually bring pollution. When we talk of reusing, we mean that if you have something that you can use several times instead of using it once and you dispose of it, it's better you actually reuse it. If it is a bag that is biodegradable and it can be used several times, it is better you actually use the same bag other than throwing it away to become waste. And when we talk of recycling, is if something has actually performed a certain function and it can no longer perform very well in that particular function, you can actually recycle it so that it can start functioning in another way. Like if you have, say, if you have plastic bags which you are using for packaging, instead of throwing them around and littering the environment, if you recycled them so that they can actually turn into perhaps fabric that you can wear, if you recycled them so that they can turn into building blocks for infrastructure development or construction, that would be something very, very useful. Another type of practice that is very important now in agroecology is vertical gardening. You know that if, there is a lot of space vertically. If you can actually grow crops in a vertical way, you can actually get much better harvests, better yields than when you actually grow them just on the ground. I can give an example of beans. If the beans are staked like this, just the bean will climb up a stake, it can go up to 2 meters going vertically. It will give you a lot of beans, more than you would actually get from a wider area if you are just using a field. And this one could be very, very useful, especially in cases where you have constricted or land or very small pieces of land. Water use efficiency. Water is a very, very important resource in agroecology, and to use water efficiently is very, very important. For instance, the types of irrigation you have to use, you have to choose which one can actually use the best water without being extravagant. For instance, drip irrigation is very good. In future sessions, we shall talk about how the drip irrigation is a water user efficiency, is more water use, can use water more efficiently than, say, the overhead sprinklers. Then when it comes to industrialization, we shall also talk about cottage industries. When I'm talking about cottage industries, I'm not saying that we are going to build cottages. I'm meaning trying to add value to agricultural products when you are actually doing it at household level. We shall also explain quite a lot about cottage industry in the future sessions. Then shortening market links. You will see that in normal trade in agricultural products, we have got middlemen, and you find that the chain for marketing products actually is very long. We have got very many people who are participating in the marketing of these. With agroecology, we intend to shorten the marketing links to make sure that you can actually interact directly with the consumer. The producers and consumers can interact directly. In other words, when we are talking about agroecology as a set of farming practices, I want you to remember that soil fertility management is a very important agroecology practice. Use of biorationals, use of light machinery to minimize pollution, diversification of varieties, species, enterprises, the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle, what would otherwise be called waste, because in agroecology we don't believe in waste. Everything is supposed to be turned into something useful. Diversification of varieties, species, and enterprises. Vertical gardening, water use efficiency, cottage industry, and shortening market links are real very important practices in agroecology. I would like to have a short break after this, and then we shall actually continue in the next session when we are tackling more especially how you can actually, the practices involved in soil fertility management, so that we can expound on those. Until next time when we meet, I just wish you a good break. Thank you.